Dear students, colonialism may have officially ended decades ago, but has its effect really disappeared? Why do many societies still struggle with questions of identity, language, culture, and power? Why do we often see the world through ideas created during colonial rule? Welcome to Postcolonial Theory, one of the most important and most frequently asked topics in UGC NET English. UGC NET में एडवर्ड सेड, गायत्री स्पिवक, होमी के भाभा और उनके कॉन्सेप्ट जैसे ओरिएंटलिज्म, सबल्टन, हाइब्रिडिटी, मिमिक्री और एम्बिवेलेंस के बारे में बार-बार प्रश्न पूछे जाते हैं। लेकिन समस्या हमेशा यही रहती है कि स्टूडेंट्स इन कॉन्सेप्ट्स को अलग-अलग पढ़ते हैं और इनके बीच का कनेक्शन समझ नहीं पाते। In this video, we'll understand the complete framework of post-colonial theory, from colonialism to post-colonialism, from Orientalism to hybridity, from subalternity to third space. So keep your notebooks ready because in the next 20 minutes, we are going to master one of the most important and most scoring topics of UGC NET English. So let's begin. First of all, what is colonialism? Before understanding post-colonialism, we must first understand colonialism. Colonialism refers to the practice through which powerful nations occupied, controlled, and exploited weaker nations. Historically, countries such as Britain, France, Spain, Portugal established colonies across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The British Empire became one of the largest empires in the history. India, for example, remained under British rule for nearly 2 centuries. लेकिन colonialism केवल राजनीतिक नियंत्रण नहीं था. It also involved cultural dominance. Colonizers imposed their language, education, religion, values, and world view on the colonized people. धीरे धीरे colonized people को ये विश्वास दिलाया गया कि उनकी अपनी संस्कृति, भाषा और परंपराएं inferior हैं. This created a deep psychological impact. Even after political independence, many societies continued to carry colonial attitudes. And that is exactly where post-colonial theory begins. UGC net keywords की बात करूं तो colonialism, empire, power, domination, cultural. UGC net keyword की बात करूं तो colonialism, empire, power, domination, cultural hegemony. Now, what is post-colonialism? Post-colonialism is the study of the effects of colonialism on cultures and society. It examines how colonial power shaped identities, knowledge, literature, history, and representation. Many students think that post simply means after. But post-colonialism is much more than a historical period after independence. ये colonial thinking के खिलाफ एक critical response है. Post-colonial critics ask important questions. Who has the power to represent others? Whose voice is heard? Whose history is recorded? And whose experiences are ignored? Post-colonial theory exposes the hidden structures of power that continue even after colonial rules end. This is why it is often linked with issues of identity, race, language, culture, and resistance. Keywords की बात करूं तो identity, representation, resistance, power, culture. We come to the most important figure in post-colonial, that is the Edward Said. 1978, Edward Said published his groundbreaking book Orientalism. This book transformed literary and cultural studies. According to Said, the West created a distorted image of East. The East or the Orient was portrayed as mysterious, irrational, backward, exotic, emotional, and uncivilized. On the other hand, the West presented itself as rational, civilized, progressive, and superior. ध्यान दीजिए, Said never claimed that these descriptions were true. He argued that these images were deliberately constructed. उन्होंने ये आर्ग्यू किया कि ये जितनी भी images हैं वो deliberately construct की गई है. The purpose was to justify colonial domination. If the East is portrayed as weak and backward, then colonial rule appears necessary and beneficial. This process is called Orientalism. In simple words, Orientalism is the Western representation of the East through stereotypes. For UGC NET, remember this formula. West equals to superior, East equals to inferior. This binary opposition lies at the heart of Orientalism or Orientalist discourse. Keywords. Edward said, Orientalism, representation, Occident Orient discourse. After Edward said, another extremely important name in post-colonial theory is Gayatri Spivak. One of her most famous essays is Can the Subaltern Speak? Published in 1988. Now, the question arises, who is the subaltern? The term subaltern originally refers to the people who occupy lower social, political, and economic positions. In post-colonial studies, it refers to marginalized group whose voices are ignored by dominant power structures. सरल भाषा में कहें तो सबल्टन वे लोग हैं जिनकी आवाज इतिहास, राजनीति और समाज में दबा दी जाती है. They are spoken about but rarely allowed to speak for themselves. Spivak argued that whenever dominant institutions try to represent the subaltern, their voices often become distorted. The most marginalized people are frequently excluded from decision-making processes. Spivak especially focused on the situation of women in colonial societies. उनका मानना था कि colonialism और patriarchy दोनों मिलकर महिलाओं को double oppression का शिकार बनाते हैं. This is why Spivak work is closely connected with feminism as well as post-colonialism. For UGC NET, remember, Edward said is the representation of the East, Spivak representation of marginalized. Keywords: subaltern, marginalized, representation, voice, resistance. Next we have Homi K. Bhabha, and this is one of the most frequently asked theorists in UGC NET, Homi K. Bhabha. Bhabha transformed post-colonial theory by showing that colonial relationships are far more complex than simple domination. According to him, colonialism produces mixed identities rather than fixed identities. Three important concepts that are associated with Bhabha, they are hybridity, mimicry, and ambivalence. Let's discuss them one by one. First is hybridity. Hybridity is perhaps Bhabha's most famous concept. The word itself suggests mixture. According to Bhabha, when two cultures interact, they do not remain completely separate. Instead, they influence each other and create new cultural forms. ये ना पूरी तरह colonial culture होती है और ना ही पूरी तरह indigenous culture. बल्कि दोनों के मिश्रण से एक नई कल्चरल आइडेंटिटी बनती है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, मेनी इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूशंस टुडे यूज इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज, वेस्टर्न एजुकेशन एंड लोकल ट्रेडिशन साइमल्टेनियसली. दिस क्रिएट्स a hybrid identity. Hybridity challenges the idea of pure cultures. It shows that identities are dynamic rather than fixed. The keywords are cultural mixing, identity transformation, hybrid culture. Next concept of Bhabha is mimicry. Bhabha explained that colonial rules often encouraged colonized people to imitate them. The colonized were expected to adopt the language, manners, education, and values of colonizer. However, this imitation was never complete. Bhabha famously described mimicry as almost the same, but not quite. ध्यान दीजिए, colonizers चाहते थे कि colonized people उनकी तरह बने, लेकिन पूरी तरह नहीं. यही contradiction colonial power को unstable बनाता है, because mimicry creates anxiety. The colonizer begins to see his own image reflected back in unexpected ways. This makes colonial authority vulnerable. Keywords: imitation, difference, colonial anxiety, power. Another important concept is ambivalence. Ambivalence means simultaneous attraction and resistance. The colonized may admire aspects of colonial culture. At the same time, they may resist colonial domination. Similarly, colonizers may claim superiority while secretly fearing the colonized population. इसलिए colonial relationships कभी भी simple नहीं होती, वे हमेशा contradictions और tension से भरी होती है. Bhabha argues that these contradictions weaken colonial authority. Next we have the third space. Closely related to hybridity is Bhabha's concept of third space. The third space is neither completely colonial nor completely indigenous. It is a new space where cultures interact, negotiate and transform. यही third space नई identity और नए meaning को जन्म देता है. For Bhabha, identity is never fixed. It is always being negotiated and reconstructed. This concept has become extremely influential in contemporary cultural studies. So keywords की मैं बात करूं तो third space, negotiation, identity, formation, cultural interaction. Now let's have the quick comparison of the three theories. Edward said Orientalism, representation of the East, Gayatri Spivak, Subaltern, marginalized voices, Homi K. Bhabha, hybridity, mimicry, ambivalence. Third space. Remember this sequence for UGC NET. Said is associated with representation, Spivak is associated with voice, and Bhabha is associated with identity. Most important PYQs we'll discuss now. The first question is, who wrote Orientalism? The correct answer is Edward Said. Second question, who introduced the concept of subaltern? The correct answer is Gayatri Spivak. Third question, who wrote Can the Subaltern Speak? The correct answer is Gayatri Spivak. Next question, who introduced hybridity? The correct answer is Homi K. Bhabha. Who introduced mimicry? Homi K. Bhabha. Which concept is associated with representation of East? And the correct answer is Orientalism. Next question, what is mimicry? Almost the same but not quite. These concepts appear repeatedly in NET examinations. Now we'll do the final revision. We'll revise everything in 1 minute. Colonialism is associated with political and cultural domination. Post-colonialism is associated with study of colonial effect. Edward said Orientalism, Orient, East, Occident, West, Spivak, Subaltern, Can the Subaltern Speak? Bhabha, hybridity, Bhabha, mimicry, Bhabha, ambivalence, Bhabha, third space. If you remember these concepts, you can solve a large number of UGC NET questions. Now you have just completed one of the most important topics of UGC NET English. If this video helped you understand post-colonial theory more clearly, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Comment below which concept do you find most difficult, Orientalism, Subaltern, hybridity, mimicry or ambivalence? And tell me which topic you want next. Feminist theory, Marxism, 50 literary term or British literary period. Until then, keep learning, keep revising and keep moving closer to your UGC NET success. See you in the next video.